Today on this special edition of Hearts of Heroes, fires, floods, and volcanoes leave wildlife and domestic animals at the mercy of Mother Nature.
My house is flooding, my dog is there, somebody's gonna have to go save him.
When these disasters strike, heroes emerge in the form of first responders and everyday citizens.
Get in, that's the dog.
Watch as they put their lives on the line to save the most defenseless creatures.
This is just incredible.
As hurricane season was in full swing, Hurricane Harvey barreled into the Texas coast, causing catastrophic damage. But thanks to the heroic efforts of a tight-knit community, many families and their treasured pets were saved just in the nick of time from those relentless floods.
Nottingham Forest, Texas. On any given morning, neighbors in this quiet suburb of Houston are out in the streets walking their dogs and making sure the kids catch the bus to school. But as Hurricane Harvey drew closer, the people of Nottingham Forest could have no idea how bad it would be.
We certainly knew from the weather reports that this was going to be rain like we'd never seen before, but we didn't have a great reference point to understand what that looked like in our neighborhood.
However, Don and his wife Brandy would soon find out as Harvey grew from a tropical storm to a Category 4 hurricane.
I walk out the front door and there's a raging river down our street. I mean, water like as far as you could see.
Chris Groh also lives in Nottingham and was out of town watching the live news coverage.
We had gone to Austin to move my son into college. We left our dog Rhodey in the house. We had a teenager in the neighborhood who was gonna come and walk him. The next morning we woke up to a phone call from my neighbor who said, "Chris, your house is flooding." I knew that Rhodey was there and we had left him downstairs, so he wouldn't have been able to get to any type of higher ground.
But there was new urgency. Reservoirs were near capacity, and to prevent dams from breaking, the Army Corps of Engineers made the difficult decision to open the spillways, flooding Nottingham Forest and leaving first responders inundated.
More and more calls coming in. We started getting medical calls in neighborhoods that we can't get to anymore because of the high water in the roads.
First responders always need to think of their community's needs first and their own needs last.
So I just wrote a message that said, "My house is flooding, my dog is there, he's not gonna be able to get away, somebody's gonna have to go save him."
My wife had seen that there was a neighbor that was dog sitting, couldn't get across the street to get a really large dog out of the house. We got to talking, and I was like, well, I can go get it with my canoe. And Michael Berg, who was the HOA president, said he would join me, and he came down to the house, and the two of us headed down the street in our boat.
Don and Michael made the treacherous trip to Chris Groh's house to rescue Rhodey. But with the waters rising, they had only minutes to make the save.
We had to kick in a back door, and then we found a 120-pound Rhodesian Ridgeback standing on top of the counter, something you're certainly not expecting in the least.
Don and Michael evacuated Rhodey from the home and let Chris know that her cherished dog was safe. But the work was just beginning for these unexpected rescuers.
I had some other neighbors who were also getting out, and there was a canoe coming. And so I got a hold of her and I said, could you send the boat to us next? Because we need to get out. Dawn showed up with another boat, and I got in the canoe with the two dogs. And then they start pulling away. I'm like, wait, my kids. And they're like, no, the other boat will get the kids.
The dogs were going frantic, and so she figured, just get the dogs out of the water, let them calm down, and then, we'll get into the boat.
All told, Don and his modest canoe saved more than 100 people, along with many of their four-legged friends.
Don and Michael really put Rhodey and our family ahead of themselves and very selflessly went out and actually risked their lives.
So from us to you, Don, thank you for saving Lucy and Katie. It really means a lot. We really appreciate what you did for us and for everyone else out there.
Coming up, a volcano erupts, leaving helpless wildlife trapped between rivers of lava.
Down, release, release.
But first, a disaster safety tip.
Flash flood warnings are issued when dangerous floodwaters are either imminent or occurring.
If there's a possibility of flash flooding or other call to evacuate in your area, it's best to be prepared to move to higher ground immediately.
Have a plan in place before water levels rise and potentially cut off evacuation routes. Warnings are there to keep you safe and out of harm's way.
Hawaii. It's one of the most majestic places on the planet, so it's kind of hard to imagine it as anything but heaven on earth. But when Mount Kilauea erupted on the Big Island, this peaceful paradise was rocked, and so many beloved animals were put in danger.
With lush mountains, dramatic waterfalls, and gorgeous beaches, Hawaii offers natural beauty everywhere you look. Just over 2 years ago, Axel Kratel and his family moved from Silicon Valley to the Big Island, buying a farm outside the town of Hilo.
Come here, buddy.
More importantly, they also bought into the spirit of the land.
In Hawaii, we have a thing called aloha. It's a way of life, and what it really represents is a strong sense of community, being connected to the land.
But on the Big Island, that beautiful land includes an active volcano, Kilauea. And in the summer of 2018, Kilauea erupted for 3 consecutive months, setting off a major earthquake that registered 6.9 on the Richter scale.
It caused major disruption around the island, particularly in this part of the island, because the lava flow covered such a large area.
Axel's farm was out of harm's way, but many people were forced to flee immediately, and their livestock left behind was in grave danger.
The thought of leaving farm animals behind just didn't sit well with me, and that's when I stepped in and started getting involved with helping out to get animals out of the lava area.
With dozens of defenseless animals trapped behind a red-hot curtain of doom, Axel joined forces with Cal Dorn, a former Marine helicopter pilot who now runs a sightseeing company.
It was through Axel's dedication and diligence and just drive that, we could finally put it all together and get out there and begin to give it a shot at trying to rescue animals.
Once Axel secured government approval, he assembled a team to attempt a unique feat. The plan was to rescue the animals by dropping giant nets from above and then hoisting them back to safety in a portable corral.
Here was an option that I don't think it's ever been done before. I certainly have never seen it done.
With Axel and his team waiting back at the portable paddock, Cal and the wildlife capture expert, Jake Muse, head off into the nearby lava flow looking for cows to rescue.
Yeah, so I think maybe if we come off the cell tower, we hit that narrow channel right there. That's a great call. Run down on the windward side. Yeah.
And moments later, some stranded animals are in sight. With Jake at the controls, Cal operates a hoist arm with a giant net, trying to scoop up the endangered cows like some kind of supersized arcade game. Under such extreme circumstance and using an untested method, there was no telling how this could go.
Well, come on, baby, one of you. Down, release, release. Yeah, track coming up now. Wait till he backs up, right there. Yeah, bingo, good. Oh, on the first try.
Miraculously, they got it on their first attempt. This daring rescue resulted in an incredible image, a 1,000-pound cow levitating above a river of lava. But they weren't out of danger yet. They still had to land this half-ton animal safely to the ground.
Okay, coming in by the first one.
As Axel and the other volunteers watched the cargo come in, his impossible rescue dream had officially become reality.
Not only did we make history with getting the cows out, we set a precedent now because there is a method that we've demonstrated with this netting system that you can go into very dangerous places without a ground crew, pull these cows out.
And they did it. They got their first rescued cow landed safely. And in the end, they would go on to rescue more than 20 cows, goats, and sheep, all just in time.
In my view, Axel, he's kind of the hero in this whole thing. He really is the reason we were able to get those large animals out.
It was a stream of volunteers that gave all these rescue efforts the energy that they needed.
When disasters strike, it takes an entire team and an entire community to fight back. From first responders and volunteers to your neighbors and everyone in between.
Coming up, when a raging wildfire threatens an animal shelter, will the officers get the frightened creatures out in time?
We just had to do what we could in the few minutes that we had.
Get in, let's go dog. As many people evacuated their homes ahead of a raging wildfire, an animal shelter in Vacaville, California, found itself right in harm's way. Thanks to the bravery of several police officers, some furry friends got some much-needed help.
The Solano County SPCA has been a pillar of the community for more than 40 years, thanks in large part to its dedicated staff.
This shelter helped me build me into the person I am today, helped make me the officer I am today in regards to the way I deal with animals.
But on August 11th, 2018, danger was looming above the shelter in the form of an unpredictable wildfire.
As I came into work, I heard my supervisor and some of the other officers talking about the smoke plume that was coming in to go take a look at it.
As the Nelson fire now raged toward Vacaville, firefighters were battling the blaze from all angles, and police officers were tasked with helping evacuate those trapped in the danger zone.
In wildfire situations, it's absolutely critical for our emergency responders to deploy their resources as wisely as possible. In this case, they were right on top of it.
Since the shelter was already closed for the day, there were just 2 employees left. With more than 80 cats and dogs on the premises and a fast-moving fire closing in, they faced a life-threatening situation.
My sergeant said, "Hey, can anybody see the flames that are on the other side of the hill?" And I looked up and I was right there and I was like, "I see the flames." And he was like, "The SPCA might need evacuation."
When Officer Jennings and I got there, it was only the 2 of us and 2 other SPCA staff because it was after hours. It was windy, so I knew we probably didn't have much time before the flames were right there.
As smoke filled the sky, the officers were faced with a rather stressful reality. They were informed that they might need to leave the shelter immediately so that they could help evacuate nearby neighbors.
I remember looking at Officer Jennings and saying, "I don't think we're going to be able to get these animals out. Maybe we should just open up the doors and give them a chance to at least run for it."
But these 2 brave officers weren't about to give up on these animals.
It was just one of those crazy things where you knew you had a limited amount of time to get something done, and we just had to do what we could in the few minutes that we had.
As quickly as possible, the officers ushered as many animals out of the building as they physically could. But with only a few vehicles, they were running out of space to put the frightened creatures.
I had a Great Pyrenees and a small little poodle thing stuffed in one side of my vehicle. I had a shepherd in the back with some kittens. Everybody was just everywhere.
With the fire burning ever closer and the clock ticking down, Officers Stone and Jennings loaded up their own patrol cars with dogs as well.
Get in, let's go dog.
And miraculously, after those frantic few minutes of adrenaline-fueled teamwork, the SPCA shelter was emptied, with all the threatened animals now on the road to safety.
It was a big sigh of relief to be getting in my patrol car and driving away from those flames and not having to worry about them overtaking us.
Officer Stone continued to work the rest of her shift with some very special partners.
I actually had 1 small dog in my front seat and 2 larger dogs in the back. They actually seemed pretty happy back there, so I just immediately went over and helped with evacuations until my supervisor realized they were still in the car and was like, "You should probably go give them back."
At the end of the day, all the animals were safe, thanks to the heroic actions of the police officers and the volunteers who helped them.
This is my home. I love this shelter. I will always love this shelter. I need to protect the animals. I consider all these animals here like my family.
The Solano County SPCA will never forget these officers who truly saved the day. And not just because of what they did during the fire. After helping rescue more than 80 animals that day, Officer Carly Stone made a permanent connection.
This is actually Sean, the dog that was in the front seat as we drove away from the fire that day and is now the newest member of our family.
Coming up, when a flash flood leaves a couple and their dog stranded, their only hope is a daring helicopter rescue.
I said, I gotta take my dog, and he said, well, you gotta hold him.
But first, another safety tip to keep you safe.
For many, in case of emergency, it's not as easy to evacuate as some may think.
If you fear you may be one of the many who don't have the ability to get out quick in the case of a natural disaster, then talk to someone in your community who does and formulate a plan with them to get you out.
We're all in this together, and if danger approaches, no one should be left behind.
Cowboys roaming the great state of Texas are known for their hats, their hospitality, and heroic spirit. So, when a flash flood stranded a couple and their dog up a tree near Junction, Texas, thankfully, that spirit was on full display.
Junction, Texas. It sits about 140 miles west of the state capital, Austin. Located where two rivers meet, the North and South Llano, this sleepy little town is a great place to fish, hunt, and just enjoy Mother Nature. But for Debbie Thomas, her short vacation with boyfriend Bobby and dog Chaps took a very unexpected turn. She soon found out why locals call Hill Country by another nickname, Flash Flood Alley.
Got there Saturday morning and camped, and we'd planned on leaving Monday morning to go home. We'd been fishing Sunday evening, and it started sprinkling a little bit.
What seems like harmless drizzle can turn into real trouble in a hurry. Since October is peak rain season, first responders were already on high alert.
They got around an estimated 12 inches of rain in a couple of hours. And all of that rain just drained off into the creeks and the streams and the rivers. And so it was basically like a wall of water coming down, and the people were unsuspecting.
Luckily for Debbie and Bobby, while they slept, her trusty dog Chaps became the first hero of the day by giving them a very helpful heads up.
He jumped up on the bed, and his paws were wet. And so I looked down on the floor, and I could see the carpet was wet. So I went over and opened the door, and water was flooding in the camper. And so I woke Bobby up and told him we need to get out.
The South Llano River had flooded its banks and entered the RV park, swirling around them as they scrambled to get out. The water was already 2.5 feet high and still rising, all at an alarming rate. With no escape route in sight, Bobby, Debbie, and dog Chaps had no choice but to take refuge high up in a tree.
It's a good thing we got in that tree right when we did. I guarantee you within 10 minutes, it's already above her waist.
First responders arrived at the bridge above the RV park, but the rushing current made it impossible to reach them by water. They had to call in a chopper.
You could hear the faint distant helicopter coming. It was the best noise I'd ever heard in my life.
We lowered the rescue swimmer down into the tree to our first victim, which ended up being an older gentleman, a male.
Before they took off, he turned to me and said, "I'll be back for you." I said, "Okay." And I felt better.
It was a relief to me. It was a good feeling to be out of that tree.
With Bobby safely on the ground, rescuers faced a new challenge. How do they hoist Debbie and her dog Chaps out of the tree?
I put her in the quick drop backwards, which basically bowed her over forward so she was leaning away from me.
I said, "I gotta take my dog," and he said, "We'd try." And he said, "You gotta hold him."
She was spent. I mean, I don't blame her. I mean, she'd been there holding onto that tree for 5 hours in the fight of her life.
When I felt him kind of raise me up, I grabbed a hold, put my arms around Shep's neck, and then when we took off, I locked my legs around him. And it just seemed like no time we were up to the helicopter. This guy took Shaps, and then they pushed me in. I was turned, and Cody's like right here, and I was hugging him, kissing him, and thanking him, and thanking him, thanking him for saving my life.
She put her arms around Cody and just hold him in tight. You know, looked like the warmest, friendliest hug I've ever seen. And she held him all the way till we got to the ground.
Debbie gave Cody a hug that lasted nearly 2 full minutes.
All I can say is thank every one of the responders and thank Cody for risking his life for ours.
He just seemed like such a sweet guy, and I just can't wait to meet him in person again and hug and kiss him again.
As we've just seen, it's not just humans that need a helping hand during disasters. It's our furry friends too, and first responders were right there to help. I'm Ginger Zee. Thanks so much for watching.